Hey, Broncos country, we're here with another episode of Altitude Advantage. I'm your host and team reporter, Elisa Hernandez, alongside our lead writer, Aric DiLalla. We have so many great things to talk about today, including comments on the show, Bo Nix, looking ahead to Steelers. But one of the things I will say is I started the show looking at the camera because I did get some comments saying, like, why are you looking down all the time? So I don't have my glasses on. There's no blockers. I can see you, Broncos country. And we're excited for another episode, right?
We are, yeah. Well, you're dialed in on your information. On the Microsoft Surface in front of you. You can't be bothered to look at the camera. We're just having a conversation here. We're not staring deep into the souls of Broncos country. But maybe we are sometimes. But yeah, it's nice to have another episode here, getting ready for the home opener. Big one.
Huge one.
Big one.
Huge one.
Got to find a way to get a win. And we'll talk a lot about how the Broncos can do that because, week one, sometimes some weird things happen. Thought there were some good things the Broncos showed, but you got to find a way to get it done on the field. Sean Payton talked a lot about the fast start. It's not just week one. It's this whole quarter pole of the season. And if the Broncos can get into that win column, it's going to be really helpful here as they move forward. So excited to talk about all of that and just get ready for maybe not the revenge game that we thought it was going to be, but
sounds so much cooler.
Sorry, yeah, kind of a bummer that. But at the same time, nice to just focus on football and get ready for week 2.
We try to be dramaless, okay? We're just trying to go get some wins, get a Super Bowl, and call it a day.
I'm
just saying what we want to do. What we want to do. We don't want drama. We just want to play football. And that's what a lot of the guys are just focused on. Even when in the locker room, when they ask them about Russ and they ask a few guys, like, hey, are you going to talk to them? And they were like, yeah, like, why wouldn't I go talk to them?
That was interesting because, like, I think the way to ask that question, if you want an answer, is like, hey, what is it going to be like to see Russ on the opposing sideline this weekend? Or, what was your relationship like with Russ? The question of, are you going to talk to Russ if you see him is just like, one, it's kind of weird. 2, the obvious answer is like, yeah, of course.
Like, they're like, no.
It just gives you a
but see,
bizarre way to frame it.
That is why he is our lead writer. He just did a 101 masterclass on how to ask
at the podium.
questions like that. You're at the podium?
I was hanging out at the podium with Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton and Pat Surtain and Sean Payton.
Name drop.
Yeah.
Flex.
I wasn't in the locker room with... I'll just stop there.
Yes, but you know what? It's interesting, and Mike McGlinchey said it. He was like, yeah, like, we go to work. This is a game, and, like, we spend a lot of time together. He's like, I'm looking forward to seeing. Like, they basically said, like, if we see him, cool. If we don't, a lot of the guys were like, we'll see him after the game. We're not friends before we head onto the field. So, who are our friends? People that leave comments.
Some of them.
On the show.
Some of them are our friends.
What? Not everybody wants to be our friend?
Not everybody.
Shocked.
Should I read them?
Yeah.
All right, this is from the Broncos official YouTube page. Head on down to YouTube Lane and leave a comment there for us. We'll subscribe, like, comment if it's nice, or if it's not nice. We'll read the nice ones on the air, but I am going to start with a mean one.
Oh, man.
This is from Jair. I don't like Altitude Advantage. It doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. I don't like you. Boom.
Chose the violence.
Yeah. I mean... We'll come back at you. This is from Devin2719. Don't forget you two are the main source of info for us long-distance fans. I just want an insider view of my team.
This is true.
What we're here for.
And I was that long-distance fan, so I feel you.
Team Took says, having Aric as a podcast partner is a low-key a flex.
I know.
I don't know if that's good or not.
It is a flex.
I think it's good. Johnny Kawasaki says, loving the new host already. I'm feeling her. Still missing Sydney and Phil, but Broncos country will be in good hands with her. Agree.
Aww.
Willie G. Altitude Advantage is a terrible name. Willie G. We can add you to the people I don't like. Let's see what else. Mary M. As a female football fan, I'm really loving having Elisa in this space. She seems so genuine and excited to be here.
I am.
I think you're great for everybody, Elisa.
Every morning I wake up like every day I want to do the podcast. Don't take that to heart.
That'd be a lot of podcasts.
Don't take that to heart.
Isaac J. Milligan says, becoming an Elisa fan. Great addition. Elisa is a true part of Broncos country. We'll miss Sydney, but I read that in the wrong order. But it shows that she's a true part of Broncos country. Thank you, Isaac.
I appreciate that.
User YE, the two of you have good chemistry as a longtime broadcaster years ago. It's nice to see. Elisa is a nice addition to the show. Rock on, Altitude Advantage. Dun, 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 go Broncos.
Oh, I like the dun, dun, dun.
Johnny 2K335, never can miss an episode once the season starts. Always my favorite part of my day. Great duo with y'all. Harold Sanchez 4825, Altitude Advantage. Let's go.
Let's go.
I like it. Eric spelled my name wrong. That's rude. And Elisa are a good combo. Fellow Salvadorian here.
Hey, Salvadoreños.
Fly Fish Hunter, you guys have great banter. I look forward to hearing your podcast on a regular basis. Best of luck to Phil, and his future endeavors. I will shout out my good friend Phil. Just started a new podcast, Broncos and Bourbon, so maybe check that out if you want to. Mm-hmm. I listened to it. Some nice Nick Ferguson action, some bourbon.
We follow each other on Instagram. I mean, on Twitter.
You and Phil?
Yeah.
That's kind of sweet.
I know. I felt honored.
Elway2426, maybe it's John Elway. Big Neutral Zone follower. Love the new show and both of your chemistry. Can't wait to watch and listen to Altitude Advantage for Broncos news. Alexis Saucedo, 5526. Let's go, Elisa. DB for life. Own your piece. Altitude Advantage is so smart to kick things off with a knowledgeable female co-host. Eric is the man. Eric and Elisa, do your thing.
Do your thing, do your thing, do your thing. What else we got?
What else
some
we
good
got?
Comments.
A lot of good comments.
Wow. Shout out to you, Broncos Gun. Shout out to all our listeners. Shout out to everyone that's subscribed. I appreciate all the love, too, in welcoming me in.
Somebody said, shouldn't that be Elisa with an E, which is, people obviously call me Eric with an A. So it's probably true. That is from our old friend, Madame Bale. Nice to see you back, Madame Bale. I know I can't find it now, but there was also a comment from our good friend Brandon from Iowa. So Brandon, thank you for commenting. We appreciate your support. Leave a comment on the show and we'll read it next week. Monday's kind of we get down to business.
Oh, yeah.
We talk.
We play no games.
Yeah, there's no time for silly little comments on Mondays. But on Thursday, there's plenty of time for silly little comments. So if you
They're not silly. They're heartfelt.
Some of them are silly.
Some of them are silly.
I like the silly ones.
Eric has control on what we read on air.
That's
so,
true.
Make sure that you guys can be witty, silly, and, keep the compliments to me coming because I'll make him read.
I'll read the nice ones, and then occasionally I'll read a mean one and blast you for it. So
yes, that is actually me thinking going to be mine.
Jair, yeah. We got beef. It's fine. All right, Broncos time?
That's the Altitude Advantage that we get, is to pick who we want beef with. But you know what? Looking ahead at week 2, there's interesting to see this matchup, right? Because there's a long history there, and obviously all the parts that are playing into it with Russell Wilson returning and those things. As far as we know, Wednesday, Russ was limited, and head coach Sean Payton is planning for both guys, but he understands it starts with Fields. And I think when you look at Fields and Bo, what does Bo need to do to, I feel like, have the game that he feels that he can play? Because he looks good in practice. He said he felt good. He said he didn't have any jitters, in the first game, which I think that's him being a little stoic because I feel like everyone has jitters. But I think, what do you think Bo needs to do or this team needs to do around him for them to get better at clicking offensively? Yeah,
and I do want to get back to the Russ, the Fields in general later in the show, but starting with Bo, and I think this is a quarterback-driven league. It's a quarterback-driven game, and certainly this week a lot of attention is on the quarterback. So I like starting with our quarterback, the Broncos quarterback, Bo Nix. Saw some stats, obviously, that down the field it was a little bit of a struggle. Attempts of 10-plus yards, I think he was maybe 2 for 12. It was a little bit of a struggle for sure.
Yeah.
I think when you look back at those attempts in particular, and I've spent a lot of time this week since Monday watching the game back a couple times, watching some of these experts, quote unquote, break it down. What is the intended play design? What is Bo seeing? It's interesting. You watch like 3 different film breakdowns, and you're going to see 3 different takes on, hey, this was a good throw, or this wasn't such a good throw, or this throw should have been here. So let's take everything here with a grain of salt, and that we are not ever going to know exactly what Sean Payton, Joe Lombardi, Pete Carmichael, Davis Webb are looking for from Bo Nix or this offense on a certain snap. And so a lot of this is just based off, I don't want to say speculation, but interpretation of what they're trying to do. That said, when you look at these downfield throws in particular, I think that there were a couple times where the Broncos offense did not help Bo, either from a protection standpoint or catching the football. And we talked about that a lot on Monday. Guys have to be better around Bo. And Sean Payton said on Wednesday, because I asked him, hey, what do you try to fix? And I asked Bo the same question post-game. What do you try to fix now versus like what's a longer term goal, or what's
a week 6 problem versus a week 1? Yeah.
And he Sean Payton, that is, was kind of like, listen, even veteran quarterbacks would have struggled to play well or find success this week because of how we played around Bo, and that it is about everybody playing better, from protection to catching the football down the field to running the ball well. I know we've gone into that on Monday, so I don't want to hammer that too hard, but I think when you look for what Bo can do better, it's hitting those down the field throws. I think those intermediate throws, maybe finding a chance to take a deep shot. We didn't see that a lot in training camp or the preseason, those true deep shots. And listen, if you're hitting the 15 to 20 to 25 yarders, I don't think you always need the 45 to 50 yarder, but you've got to be able to hit the 15 to 20 to 25 at times, because otherwise everyone just plays up. And Bo had throws less than 10 yards, had like an 80 quarterback rating. So fine. It just was that those throws were often short of the sticks, weren't able to find a way to get many first downs. So it starts with throwing the ball down the field a little bit more and finding more success. And that's Bo, I think, settling into some of those throws. Like you mentioned, there were a couple throws that were maybe a little over guys' heads, weren't placed exactly right. Maybe some of that is first game jitters. We didn't see that a lot in training camp in the preseason, so I would expect that to settle down. But then also guys have to help them. So that's where it starts, is those down the field throws.
Yeah, and a lot of the guys, what I liked is even in practice, post game, a lot of guys took ownership of that, right? And they really came to bat for their quarterback, because they know that the outside world is going to say, oh, see, this is that. We knew he wasn't the guy. But the guys in the locker room were like, we didn't really help him be successful either. Mike McGlinchey was one of those guys that said, like, you can't really be successful on third down if you're not successful at first and second down. And he was very, strong in saying, like, Bo did not show any kind of like fear in being down. He didn't show any kind of fear after throwing those 2 interceptions. He just came back and was like, we have to make a play. And I think when you have a rookie talking to vets like that, going to the locker room, going to the into the huddle, one of the things Mike McGlinchey said, like, I liked how he took command of the huddle. So I think that also says a lot. And I think, like you said, with the running game, it needs to get better. Everyone has said that. Nothing's a secret. Everyone has been very vocal about what needs to get better going into this. And we did get some unfortunate news with Audric Estime. They placed him on IR, must miss at least 4 games, and is eligible to return week 6 versus the Chargers. So with that being said, with the 2 guys that you have, how do you kind of get them in rotation to kind of, get that spark going?
Yeah, good question. And we'll see, is Blake Watson more involved? Rookie out of Memphis, does Tyler Beatty come up? Some of those things as we're talking today haven't been answered quite yet. But I do think you need a little bit more out of Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin. Jaleel McLaughlin actually had more touches than Javonte in week 1, but we're used to him being more explosive. And certainly I think that was his first career fumble against the Seahawks, so we're used to him being a little bit more sure-handed. I think 9 times out of 10, Javonte Williams has taken that second play after the turnover early in week 1 and scoring a touchdown there instead of slipping. And so you just need these guys you don't need them to be superhuman or spectacular. Just play your game. And I think part of week 1 so often is like, it doesn't look like the rest of the season, or there's like a lot of outliers or weird things that happen. And even though these guys are veterans, they're still getting used to playing a full real football game. What it's like to play on the road. Adam Troutman said that this week of like, okay, that's probably the loudest place we'll play all year. So now we know what it's like and what it takes to play in an environment like that. Yeah. And so I do expect that guys will bounce back and play closer. I said they don't have to be superhuman, just be yourselves. I do think we'll see more of a, hey, like, this is what the expectation, or this is like what they are. And if they do that, I think they'll be in better shape. I will say offensively, this is going to be another, you never really know. Like, it's possible the Broncos go out and light it up, but this defense is really spectacular.
Yeah.
TJ Watt, obviously former defensive player of the year, I believe 4-time first team All-Pro. They got Minka Fitzpatrick there on the back end, Alex Highsmith. really good football player, Patrick Queen. I mean, there are dudes on this defense
that are looking to make a play.
Yeah, and so this is going to be another game that I think is a physical, tough game. Every drive is going to matter. If you score a touchdown, I think you're going to feel really good. I mean, this is a Steelers team that last week won 18-10. They forced a couple turnovers.
Yeah.
The Steelers didn't score a touchdown themselves. They had 6 field goals. And so if the Broncos can get a touchdown or, maybe this week take advantage and capitalize on an early opportunity, it could be the difference, because I think both sides is going to be a defensive battle. Can you get a couple first downs and just flip the field? I mean, it's going to be important not to go 3 and out every time this week. Field goals will be big, and not turning the ball over. I mean, there's some stats about how good the Steelers are when they force multiple turnovers.
Yeah.
And then there's, kind of the flip side of that is when they don't force turnovers, how it's much easier. I don't want to say easier, but their win-loss record becomes a lot more palatable from an opposing standpoint. And so, Bo, if you're him, find a way to make a few chunk plays when you can. Use your legs, which I think we were all really impressed by that.
It's pretty fast.
I saw a stat that our friend Zach Stevens from DNVR said Bo had the second fastest run of any player in week 1.
Wow.
Just impressive.
Speed.
Speedy Bo. I think 20 plus miles an hour.
That's crazy.
That's kind of what I do just on a normal day.
Yeah.
So,
for sure. I mean, I
said we're the same speed. It's good to know that.
I mean, you're basically the same athlete. I mean, honestly. But the thing is, with that, I think that's really important. Bo was the leading rusher in week 1. That's obviously not what you want to see. But the positive you can take from there is the fact that he can be dynamic on that side and make a play with his legs, which I think is, especially with our league now, you do need a dimensional quarterback. You really just can't have someone that stays in the pocket. I feel like those days are now over. And with Javonte Williams, I mean, there is a little of motivation because he's only 96 rushing yards from reaching 2,000 career rushing yards.
Okay.
So, little motivation. I know a lot of players don't even look at stats most of the time. Most of the time, they don't even know when they reach the milestone until it's flashing somewhere. But speaking of that defense, I'm going to read you TJ Watt's stat line from last week.
Okay.
He had 4 tackles, 1 sack, 3 QB hits, 2 tackles for loss, 1 forced fumble, and had 2 strip sacks that were nullified by penalties in week 1 versus Atlanta. So I know these guys have seen plenty of tape on him, but do you have the mentality of slowing him down, or do you have the mentality stopping him?
Yeah, I mean, you obviously can't stop him, and you got to be
realistic, right?
Yeah, and you got to figure out what are you asking of your, he normally lines up on the left, so that's Mike McGlinchey going against him over there at right tackle. It's figuring out, what are you asking of Mike McGlinchey? When do you chip? There's times where he's going to have to take him one-on-one, I'm sure. There's times where you're going to have to double-team TJ. There's times where you're going to have to chip him with a back or a tight end. When those things happen, you've then somewhere you're either adding a guy to the route or you're taking a guy out of the route. You got to figure out, what is the best way to do this. And that comes down to down and distance, where you are in the game, what the score is, all those sorts of things. That's where Sean Payton's, offensive genius comes into play of figuring out how to handle a guy like that. I will say there are a couple games that this game reminds me of. One is a couple years ago against San Francisco, which was an ugly 11-10 win for the Broncos, where the Broncos defense played really well and shut San Francisco's offense down. But on the flip side of that, San Francisco's defense is really good and really limited Denver's offense, and Denver needed a go-ahead touchdown drive with a couple minutes left.
Yeah.
And so in some ways, this game kind of feels like that to me. The other game it feels like is Cleveland last year, where Cleveland also has a stud rusher in Myles Garrett. And there were a lot of questions coming in about how is this Denver offense going to match up against Myles Garrett and a Browns defense that, whether it's Owosu Koromoa at linebacker, Denzel Ward, I think he actually missed that game, but there were playmakers all over the place. And the Broncos, to their credit, really took over that game. It was probably their best performance in my mind of all of last year. And the way they did that is to neutralize Myles Garrett, they ran the ball really well. And if it's 3rd and 1 or 3rd and 2, or if you stay out of third downs, it's hard for, and granted, TJ Watt's a really good run player too, so it makes it tricky, but harder for TJ Watt to tee off on your quarterback if it's not 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9. If it's 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, and you can do these short passes, you can run the ball. That's what neutralizes him. But certainly he's going to make his plays. You just have to, I think back to when I talked to Bo in June, and I was like, how do you avoid making mistakes? And he was like, well, you're going to make mistakes. Like, it might be the wrong drop. It might be the wrong first read. You might not throw the ball exactly the way you want, but you got to avoid making the critical ones. Yeah. And to me, that's what this week is about is, Bo, the sacks we saw last week were him running out of bounds. But, if you take a sack, make sure you don't fumble the football. Or
throw it away if you know you're going to get sacked, right? Like having that kind of management as well.
Right. Or maybe you have to punt, but don't make that decision where you're going to throw a bad pick. Because I think Bo would tell you that he's probably better than a couple of the decisions he made in week 1. And this game feels like if you can just play clean football, run the ball, avoid bad mistakes like a turnover in your own end that gives the Steelers a short field, that feels like a recipe for disaster. Like, just play smart, clean football and get yourself in it at the end and try to make a play to win at that point.
Well, I think that's one of the things that, Sean Payton had talked about was like we started off good. We were giving really good field position, but then we didn't strike. We didn't take advantage of that field position.
Yeah.
And that's in reference to Alex Singleton. Well, Jonathan Cooper's sack and then Alex Singleton's interception, return for 21 yards. So I think Bo knows that too, right? And that's where that maturity and that kind of relationship that he has with Sean Payton comes into play, because he's willing to hear that, and he's not going to put blame on other people. He's like, okay, you're right. Like, we should have got a touchdown there, because those little things at the beginning, especially when you're going against tough defenses or tough environments, you cannot waste an opportunity to put 6, 7 on the board, because, and not to sound dramatic, but you may not get that chance again for a couple of series, and so you kind of have to get things going, give your defense a rest. And get your your side clicking. And I think you said it perfectly, like no turnovers and clean football. I think that's something that was really emphasized this week too.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't beat yourself against this team.
You can't help them. You can't help them beat you.
Yeah, there are teams around like Bill Belichick's Patriots used to, like, they wouldn't beat themselves. Mike Tomlin's Steelers are a team that does not beat themselves. And so you've got to realize that there are times where an incompletion might be okay, or punting it away might be okay. And we'll get to the Steelers offense in just a second, but like, let your defense make plays for you. And again, I think there are times where Cortland Sutton or Josh Reynolds or whoever, like, they're gonna have their opportunities to make plays. Bo's still gonna have to make big time throws on third down, for example. But can you limit kind of the hero plays you have to make? And maybe that's by staying in 3rd and short. And the run the ball is really important, because that Cleveland game, the Broncos just kind of, they set the tone. And then when you're playing a team that offensively is not built necessarily to, and who knows exactly what they are, but we've seen times where Justin Fields has struggled to throw the ball down the field.
Yeah.
If you get a lead, then you put the pressure on Pittsburgh, and your defense has the advantage, and now a turnover from them could really swing things in your favor. So, this offense needs to play clean football, like you said, Elisa, and hopefully let the Broncos defense do what they can do.
What you just said right now, momentum swing is huge, and I think Peyton, Alex Singleton, a few guys talked about it. Like, we had momentum and it swung away in that third, but then it took us too long to get it back. And so they were, Brandon Jones had talked about that to me yesterday. He let me know, like, he was like, I'm happy that happened early on, because now we got a taste of it and we know what we need to do to get that momentum back faster, because we know that we can get the momentum back. I mean, in that game alone, we were just a couple plays, they were just a couple plays away from potentially driving down to win that game. But looking at Justin Fields, he made his first start versus the Steelers in week 1. over the Falcons. Russell Wilson wasn't initially supposed to start.
With the Steelers, yep.
He was with the Steelers. No, against the Falcons.
You said against the Steelers.
Oh, my bad. Appreciate
That'd be crazy.
Appreciate the fact check.
That'd be wild.
Made his first start for the Steelers in week 1. He was 17 to 23 for 156 passing yards, 91.9 passer rating, and 57 rushing yards in week 1 with the Steelers. That was against Atlanta. Now, that's his 19th game with 50-plus rushing yards since 2021, second most amongst QBs behind Lamar Jackson. So he does have an explosive side to him, but I feel like Russ kind of has that too. We'll get to him in a second, but looking at Fields, what do you see there?
Yeah, I mean, all Broncos fans have to do is look back to last year in Chicago to know what Justin Fields can do. He didn't have an incompletion at halftime. He was torching the Broncos, and the Broncos ended up winning that game because Justin Fields had a big turnover, and the Broncos were able to get a late stop there, I believe, on 4th down on near field goal range. But that said, like, Justin Fields can make plays, and especially with his legs, he is dangerous. I think he averages the second most rushing yards of any quarterback in NFL history. So he can get after it out of the pocket. It's going to be a big challenge. Obviously, they're going to, Najee Harris, a very good back.
Yeah.
I would imagine they're going to rely on Fields, Najee Harris to try to play ball control and really, take control of this game. Now with Fields, it was interesting looking at the stats. When he was blitzed, not quite as effective as when he wasn't blitzed. The completion percentage was still high when he was blitzed, but not a lot of yards there. I believe only 10 yards when blitzed. Obviously, Vance Joseph, his defense, they like to blitz the quarterback, a 50% blitz rate in week 1. And so we'll see if the Broncos, do they send an extra rusher at Fields, try to get a turnover, a forced fumble, an interception. The Steelers, certainly the same way the Broncos are going to look to not turn the football over.
Yeah.
And Mike Tomlin's teams have had a lot of success when they don't turn the ball over. And when they turn the ball over, it's kind of like, it's simple here, right? Like, turnover is bad, no turnover is good, right? But like, if Fields can avoid turnovers, the Steelers are going to put themselves in a good spot. But if the Broncos can find a way to get one or two, is it Zach Allen getting a strip sack or Jonathan Cooper going against his old college teammate and finding success again? But what the Broncos have to make sure doesn't happen is that Fields has time, gets into a rhythm. Last year in Chicago, DJ Moore had a lot of success, and Fields just found him again and again.
Yeah.
The Broncos have to make sure that they make Fields uncomfortable. Obviously, this is a player that has a lot of talent, struggled a little bit in Chicago, but still has that ability, and you don't want to let him capitalize against you. And some weapons, George Pickens, obviously at wide receiver. We'll see if Pat Surtain follows him or if he sticks more in kind of a traditional role where he stays on one side. But these guys still have playmakers. I know that they struggled a little bit in the preseason. They didn't score a touchdown in week 1, but still enough to score 6 times, 6 field goals, which won the game for them. They are going to try to batter you. Again, physically, this is going to be a tough game. Broncos defense has to be ready to play. And I think another thing, Elisa, that's important is you got to be ready the whole time. Broncos defense talked about they came out of the locker room after halftime and weren't quite locked in for a moment, and it cost them. And in a game like this, at home, hopefully use the crowd noise to your advantage. Yeah. But you got to be ready and you got to be dialed in the entire time. You can't let up.
I think that's really important. And I think one of the things that you can see from the Steelers is that since 2022, I believe they are 2-11 when they have at least 1+ interceptions. So they have not been successful when they do turn that ball over. And when they score less than 17 points in a game, they're 1-6 when they score less than 17 points in the game. So there is, not a perfect formula, but there is some kind of formula there that if the Broncos defense can get to Justin Fields early, if they can kind of get him off balance, if they can get an early turnover like they did in Seattle and play most of the first half on their side of the field, there is an opportunity there to get ahead and sustain that lead versus keeping pace and then having that one, like you said, that go-ahead play potentially cost them a game, which is not what they want. So I think kind of looking at those things is important. And then Russell Wilson obviously can also prove something. Who knows if by any chance, he ends up playing, which I don't see happening, but it could.
Yeah. As we're recording this, it's Thursday. The Steelers have not announced their Thursday practice report yet, so all we know is he was limited Wednesday. Mike Tomlin said early in the week that the plan was for Justin Fields to start, that they're preparing as if Justin Fields is starting, and that right now Russ is injured and not available to them. Mm-hmm. The Broncos are preparing for both, like we said earlier in the show. And if it is Russ, I think that you maybe deal with a little less mobility. Like, he's probably not going to run around the same way that Justin Fields is.
Yeah.
But maybe, Russ just knows how to make plays and is obviously a veteran. He's their starter for a reason.
Yeah.
I do think in general this matchup, everybody built it in the offseason as Russell Wilson comes back to Denver, takes on the team that traded for him, signed him to this big extension. Like, that was the talk. And if Russ were preparing to play, I think there'd be a lot of chatter around that this week. It has not been, at least so far, a big storyline. Sean Payton did mention, like, it's not golf, it's not tennis. We're playing a football game. It's a team game.
Yeah.
But generally, because it doesn't look like he's in line to play, it just hasn't been the same storyline. And I think that's good for Denver because this team has more to worry about than just like facing Russell Wilson again. This team has to make sure to get a win. It's got to have its young quarterback play better. It's got to have the people around its young quarterback play better. The defense has to be more consistent. You got to find a way to have success in your home opener. And the Steelers are a really good football team with a really good defense.
Yep.
A backup quarterback in Justin Fields that is still very capable, obviously was a starter in this league, a top 10 pick. And so the fact that, football coaches talk a lot about distractions and all that, Elisa. Yeah. I think the fact that they are able to maybe not have the Russ element be as big of a storyline this week is helpful because now it's just about football. There's nothing else. It's just about football.
And the guy's not even feeding into that. We touched on that a little earlier in the locker room when they were being asked about it, and they made it a non-issue. It's like, no, like, we're like, look, what we do on the field is that, after the game, I'm sure we'll see each other. A lot of players hang out and talk to former players. But I like that they didn't make it anything. And you can't really extend any kind of storyline if you're not getting fed the information to do that. So I think, the locker room did a really good job of just minimizing any of that chatter and just kind of staying focused. And really the talk was TJ Watt most of the time in the locker room and acknowledging that matchup's going to be there. But Justin Fields, he's never started his career 2-0 and has never won more than 2 games in a row. So some food for thought there. And you touched on it being the first home game. Pat Surtain said that this game could set the tone for the season, having that home field advantage, having that altitude advantage.
Oh, I like it. Good tie-in, good plug.
A little drop there. They talked about how the first game of the season, the fans are going to be there, and we have full advantage. Being able to play this week at the stadium, it's going to mean a lot. It has a lot at stake going into the season for sure. And that was Pat Surtain who said that, because he said that it could set the tone. You touched on the crowd noise and just it being such a good environment. I think it's the perfect second game for Bo, because I think, like, you're not traveling, you're here. He said he's been looking forward to this day since he got drafted.
Yeah, obviously playing at home is always a benefit. The Broncos have had this campaign, See You Sunday, to get people excited, get ready for the game. I certainly need Broncos country there in full force, and we know that Steelers fans travel well, but you need Broncos fans to be there, be loud, give this team the home field advantage it deserves. Offensively, I think it makes just things a little bit easier that, you might still have to worry about where the heck is TJ Watt coming from? What is he doing on this play? Interestingly, the Steelers had the lowest blitz rate of any team in week 1, and maybe that was matchup driven against Kirk Cousins and the Falcons. And to be fair, both of Bo's interceptions did come when he wasn't being blitzed. There was pressure on one of them, actually both of them, from just a 4-man rush. But that said, like, maybe from a protection standpoint, you're not having to worry quite as much about, like, our 6 guys coming here, our 7 guys coming here, and you can just – it's still a challenge, obviously, to block TJ Watt, and we saw that against the Falcons, but they didn't blitz as much last week, so maybe that's helpful for a young quarterback as he's calling out protections and that sort of thing. And I think the other thing is that as you're dealing with all that, it's not – your ears also aren't ringing. Like, you're not you're able to hear. You're able to do the things that you need to do as a quarterback, as an offense. The snap count you get off just a little bit sooner. So that should help defensively. having that crowd noise be an advantage and in your favor, does it cause a couple false starts for Pittsburgh and some penalties that can help you? Does it make the right tackle get a little bit less of a jump and Jonathan Cooper's able to get there to Fields? I mean, we'll see how all that goes, but obviously it's easier to play at home. And I think you're right in terms of setting the tone. Like we've heard a lot about young and hungry can be dangerous, and this team can surprise people and they want to prove it. And
you're trying to eat, Eric. They're trying to eat.
They're trying to eat. But this is when you got to go do it, right? Like the Broncos, they started 1-5 a year ago, and they were able to get to 7-6 eventually, but it took so much energy and emotional bandwidth to get there that if you fall into that again, guys would know, hey, we're able to do it. But at the same time, you're like, gosh, that took all sorts of energy. So just stay on the right side here, get back to 500, show that this team is making strides. And it might not be pretty, but Elisa, what is pretty is a win, regardless of how it looks. And so that's got to be the goal. And hopefully being at home makes that possible. Well,
Broncos country, you guys show up and you guys show out strong. Orlando Franklin had mentioned that, former Bronco Orlando Franklin had mentioned that, there's a certain calm over the city that happens. And he's like, there's nothing like game week. Everyone shows up early. Everybody gets to the game. Like there's nothing like that home opener. And the Broncos actually own the NFL's home record sellout streak for a single city. And in terms of their record against the Steelers, they last played each other in 2018. The Broncos won that matchup.
Great game.
And they hold a 9-3-1 record in Denver and lead the overall record 15-10-1. So I know different players are not here. They're different teams. We get all that, right? But it's nice to know, this isn't someone you've never beaten. This isn't someone that comes into Denver and just does whatever they want. Some of the biggest highlights in franchise come against this team. So I think that's a really good sign. And you have a few guys making their home debuts, 4 of them being rookies, including Bo. But Josh Reynolds had said that he's excited and he's ready for the crowd and the atmosphere. He's ready to be introduced to Broncos country in the proper way. Because in Seattle, there was a lot of orange there as well. So shout out to you guys from whoever made that trip. Brandon Jones said that he's really excited for his first game at home and things like that. Cortland Sutton said he emphasized, never gets old. Quote, "This is my 7th one, and I tell people all the time, people think it's bias, but I love playing at home. It's one of the best atmospheres to be a part of."
Yeah, no doubt about it. And certainly that 2018 game came down right to the very end. Shelby Harris had an interception in the end zone. It was the most athletic play that I've seen a defensive lineman make. It was spectacular. And this is just kind of the game you want if it goes the way that I think it will, where it's going to be physical, it's going to be close, it's going to be back and forth, and somebody's going to have to go make a play late in the game to make it happen. And you just hope the Broncos are the team that's able to do that. Yeah, and to me, playing at home, Bo said it in his press conference on Wednesday. He said, "I'm really happy I don't have to travel. I'm really happy that I'm home. I'm really happy that we have this game." Like he seems really excited, right? I feel like the road was starting off on the road. It feels more like a business trip, right? And it always is, but it feels more like, okay, clean cut. Let me go do what I got to do. But when you play at home, I feel like you do get that sense of calmness of being like, I'm with my fans, right? So they're going to cheer me on the entire time. Trust me, we are all waiting to hear incomplete. Like, we're all excited to hear that, right? Because it does it feeds your defense. You know what I mean? And even, especially on those drives, like you said, when they're tired, when, it's late in the game and they're trying to make a play, that crowd noise, I feel, really feeds into it, because every defensive player is waiting for that eruption when you make a big play, right? Yeah, absolutely. I cannot wait for Sunday. It'll be really exciting. Well, we're going to see you guys on Sunday. We're super excited for this matchup. That is the Week 2 matchup versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. Make sure you guys get there early. It's the first home game of the season. I'm hyped. This is my first official home game as well. So I'm going to be on Jumbotron doing Red Zone, doing a couple fun things. Eric will be in the press box typing away. So make sure you guys follow him on Twitter. Type. We got to get your Twitter numbers up. We got to get my Twitter numbers up. All right? Because we were told that we were in a bracket. I was unaware of this.
I lost first round, demolished. But I don't even know
It's
who.
okay. You're new. We'll get there.
We need all the Altitude Advantage fans to be aware that there are Twitter polls out there so that they can vote for you.
I think it's too late at this point.
Well,
it's okay. Next year or whenever this unofficial contest happens again.
Well, you know what? We'll be back next week for another great episode. So make sure you guys subscribe. We appreciate you guys for following along and listening to the podcast. Once again, I'm Elisa Hernandez, the team reporter. That is our lead writer, Aric DiLalla, and we will see you on Sunday. Aric, you got to say it
Perfect.
too.
Oh, sorry.